So today's video is going to be a little bit different, you guys. Normally I bring you along with me to back to behind the scenes type of things. Today is just going to be a recap of my experience with the vegetable garden that I had for 2020. If you have been a follower of mine here on YouTube or on Instagram, you know that I started a brand new to me, vegetable garden in my property. To be honest with you, growing vegetables for me was not a really big priority in the past few years. My husband was the one out there, buying plants, taking care of them. I really didn't care. I enjoy eating the tomatoes that came fresh from our backyard, but I never really care much for them. There wasn't really a turn point or a moment or a reason even for me to start learning about growing vegetables in my backyard. It just sort of happened naturally. My husband's work changed and he was no longer able to be there during the daytime to take care of the few plants that he had. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to take care of the vegetable part of my garden. I mean, I'm outside anyway doing things with my flowers and shrubs, but really we only had a very small raised bed, about 4 by 12 feet in size. So there wasn't really much to use for growing vegetables. We had an area in our backyard where we had been collecting soil for the past few years. We had a reason for collecting it because we thought that we were going to use this soil for other projects in our home. That ended up not happening, and right about a year ago, at the very end of 2019, I decided that we were going to get rid of all that soil and we're going to add a few more beds. That way I could have a little bit more space to grow, tomatoes, peppers, and maybe other plants that I wanted to try and experiment with. So we got that taken care of. I am very thankful that my husband was on board because without his help, I was definitely not gonna be able to do this by myself. So we added 4 large new beds, raised beds, and we got brand new soil. We got the special kind that one of our local companies offer for growing vegetables. And while all of that is going on, I decided to start going to a library, renting some books about growing vegetables. I also decided to follow a lot of people that have experience growing vegetables in their own gardens, and that's where I found Gary from the Roasted Garden, Jessica from Roots and Refuge, and this guy from England, Charles Downing. They are pretty amazing, and I'm going to put links below in the description if you want to follow their channels, because they have been the major inspiration for me to do the things that I'm doing in my own garden. My space is very, very small. So I decided that I needed to take advantage of every inch of space that I had for growing vegetables. And not only we added all those raised beds, but we also had a bunch of containers on the side where we could, put some basil or some herbs, and that worked really, really well for me. While watching all these people on YouTube, how they do things in their own places, the main thing that they recommended was starting the plants from seed. Obviously, I had no experience whatsoever doing this, and my husband did have some experience doing this, but because we had such a small space before in the past years, he will go to a local nursery and grab a couple tomato plants, a couple pepper plants, and a handful of herbs, and that was it. That's all we needed. But having all of this new extra space, I knew that I needed to save money on buying the plants. So I decided to invest, because it was an investment at first, in a growing setup room, buying lights and a shelving unit for growing my own seeds. So again, this is all happening before January of 2020. So the world was still normal. People weren't, buying extra seeds or anything. I just happened to, be doing my research as I was watching these people with their garden tours, showing me the tomatoes that they have growing or the peppers that they have growing. I was making my own list of what seeds to get. I basically purchased everything that I needed, including the seeds, way before February of 2020. Again, up until this point, everything was still normal in the world. Most of my seeds came from one place, Baker Creek's. I like what I saw as far as the company goes, so that's where I order most of my seeds. What a lot of people will say was, if you need to get 5 tomato plants for your garden, you really need to start about 10, just in case some of them don't germinate or some of them die. And so that's what I did. I knew how many plants I needed, and I added about 25% more of the seeds to begin with, so just in case they didn't germinate, just in case they die on me for whatever reason. But not only that, I also decided to start tomatoes and peppers and other things for my parents, for my sister-in-law, and for one of my sisters. So I quickly realized that I was going to be running out of space. Just the tomatoes alone, I had about 70 plants altogether. And that was a lot, you guys. This year, you're gonna have to get your plants somewhere else because I'm just not gonna have enough space. And this year, I have so many more varieties of other vegetables and flowers that I want to start. So I think I'm going to have to get a second shelving unit for all of the seeds that I have. So let's talk a little bit about the disappointments that I had in my vegetable garden. Again, this is my first year. Lots of these things I had no idea. So while I failed at some of these things, it was a great learning experience for me for these coming years. So now I know what not to do when it comes to certain things. First was basically I killed my cucamelon plants and marigolds. So what happened was that my cucamelons and my marigolds grew beautifully. They became beautiful plants, but I was a little bit too early taking them out there. About 2 weeks too early. In central Indiana, May 10th is the safe day where you can go out there and just get your tomatoes and peppers and everything else. So I thought, well, if I take them out, I don't know, like late in April, I think they will be okay. And if something happens where it gets a little too cold, I just protect them, right? I was completely wrong. I had 3 cucamelon plants out there going in this trellis, and they were looking gorgeous. And then right at the very beginning of May, we had a huge low in the weather, and that killed 2 of my cucamelon plants. I was left with one that was kind of sad looking, but I had hopes that it was going to make it, and instead of having 3 cucamelon plants, I only had 1 because that was completely my fault. And my marigolds, they were completely fried. I was not able to enjoy them, not even one plant. They were all dead. Another thing that happened was that I was not able to grow radishes that well. I think that having new soil that was very rich in nutrients didn't help my radishes. I think the next year I'm just going to keep an eye on that, making sure that I don't add any nitrogen high fertilizers to the area where I keep my radishes. So another disappointment that I also had was that I started some plants a little too early, early enough that I just couldn't keep them alive inside. I had a few butternut squash and a couple of melons that were started like about a month and a half before my last frost day, and that was definitely way too early. Now I know for next year that squashes and melons, I could probably get away with starting them inside about 2 weeks before, and that should give me plenty of time to get them big enough, but not too big that they will die inside. To be honest, that was it. That was all the failures that I got from my vegetable garden this year. I didn't really feel like I failed per se when it comes to these things. I definitely learned how not to do things a certain way. And I think that's basically, you know, what happens in your garden every year. You learn something new. And in my case, I learned a lot, and I am thankful for that. There were a few things that were not really a disappointment, but were more like in the middle between success and disappointment. My carrots and my onions didn't grow that well. I had harvest, right? But I didn't really have the size. I really had huge onions. And what I learned after the fact, after I bought some seeds, was that onions have to be the right kind of variety for your area, where either you have short days or long days. That's what's really going to help you with growing onions. And I didn't know that until after I was already harvesting these onions. So, and my Kajari melons, I think that I had high expectations for those. I had great harvest. I just wasn't that impressed with the flavor. I don't know. I'm still deciding if I'm going to grow them again next year. Maybe it's time to try something else instead, or another type of melon anyway. So my successes with the garden. Well, first of all, starting with the seeds, I have to say that I was impressed with the germination rate that I had with all of my seeds, really. Like I mentioned, everywhere where I check, you know, they will tell me if you need 2 plants, plant 4. So just in case any of them don't come up, they don't germinate, or they die on you. I had 100% germination of all of my seeds. And I honestly think that having a warm room where I was growing them, great quality of seeds and seed starting mix did the trick for my seeds anyway, from my experience. I'm definitely going to be going back to Baker's Creeks for more seeds for this coming year. My cucamelons, they were definitely a great success for me. I not only love the flavor of cucamelons, but I also love that one plant gives you plenty of cucamelons. Every day I will be out there in the garden eating, you know, grabbing a couple here and there. And most of the time I will not even have enough to bring inside to do anything with them, because we will be just eating them straight from the plants. And they really grew a lot and quickly. I think that if I had 3 plants there growing like I originally planned it, it would have been overkill, because the one plant that survived the freeze, it took over that whole place, and I constantly had to be pruning the plant, you know, cutting a third of the plant here and there, because it wanted to take over all of where I had my peppers and where I had my basil. It was just crazy good, just one plant. So if you grow cucamelons next year, you definitely need to consider the space that you need to give them. Do you guys like the flavor of cucamelons? Because I love them. I know I saw a few people in the past few months here mention that they just didn't care for cucamelons, and I'm surprised because I love them. Lettuce. I love all of the lettuces that I got, and I had tons of them, you guys. Some of the time I was just not able to keep up with all of them. Now that I started a few varieties this year, not only from lettuce but from the rest of my vegetables, I am quickly making my list of favorites when it comes to my vegetables, because while there were some lettuce that did well, they grew, they gave me plenty, there were others that just had that crunchiness and that flavor that I think that I'm definitely going to be repeating a lot of my lettuces for next year. And tomatoes were, I am very happy with how many tomatoes and the quality that I got from my garden. I had tomatoes in different colors and different sizes. I had pinks, reds, purples, yellows. I mean, they were amazing for me. And I think that if I had to choose one vegetable this year that was my favorite to grow, tomatoes, definitely it. And honestly, I didn't know that I like bok choy that much until this year. And bok choy was definitely something that surprised me this year, because one, I didn't know that I like it that much, and two, they were not that hard to grow, really. As long as I gave them a little bit of shade during the hot summer and I kept watering them, that's basically all I did. Another success in my garden, at least during the spring and early summer, was basil. I started basil mainly because it's one of those herbs that you can put here and there in between your vegetables that will help repel things that will want to eat your other vegetables. So I had lots of basil, and my goodness, I made tons of pesto because I had lots and lots of basil. And even when they're flowering, I think they look beautiful. And I'm honestly surprised at how easy it was to start them from seed, because I feel like cilantro takes a little bit more patience and rosemary takes forever to grow. But basil, it germinated quickly and it grew really, really well for me. So basil is another repeat for me. So before this video gets any longer than what needs to be, I just want to say that I am very happy and very excited for this coming year, because 2020 was definitely a tough year for everybody, and I think that we all did what we could trying to make it somewhat normal, and gardens were definitely a huge part in people's lives this year. I am thankful that I was able to find supplies, to find seeds, and to get what I needed locally for starting my own vegetable garden. And I was debating whether to make this video or not about my vegetable garden, because what I noticed in a lot of my videos here on YouTube, the ones that talk about vegetables weren't that popular. But in the last couple of weeks, I have been going through my videos and I have been enjoying my small films that I did of my vegetable garden in the early spring, and in a couple that I did in the summer. And looking back, I wish that I would have done more of the vegetable garden, not because a lot of people will benefit from it, but because I could now go back and enjoy those myself. And honestly, the reason why I started this YouTube channel was because I wanted to keep some sort of history and to look back and enjoy all of that myself. I really regret not making more videos on how I did things with the vegetables, because I do have a lot of pictures and videos in my phone, but you know, I have to go through them and go through the months and through the weeks. And if I had them on YouTube, it would be a lot easier. So that said, I hope that you enjoy this video. I hope that, I don't know, maybe it helped you understand how I did things a little bit more, and maybe even inspire you to make your own. You don't have to go and make 5-10 new raised beds if you don't have the space. You can start with a few buckets, a few containers. A lot of the things that I have in my own garden, I found them through the Facebook Marketplace, which you can find a lot of great things, lots of treasures in there for your own place. So this video is going to be very long. So yesterday I made a story on Instagram. If you are on Instagram and you want to see what I'm doing, go there, find me there, because I am constantly posting stuff. I posted a story if anybody had any questions about vegetable garden, mine in particular, and some people had a couple of questions, so there we go. Who is that? So Jay Jacobs asks, best advice on rotating crops in smaller garden space. So yes, this is my first year, so I am going to be looking into that as well. My answer basically is I don't know yet. I am going to be working on that as well, because I am definitely because I am planning my garden for 2021, and I need to figure out where my tomatoes are going to be. Am I going to put in where I have my cabbages? Probably not. So that's something that I cannot give an answer, because I don't quite know much about the subject just yet. Amy loves to garden asks, what was the easiest to grow? Tomatoes, for sure. And basil and peppers. Yes, definitely. Mary F. Nurse, As what zone are you in? Did you grow anything over winter? I am in zone 5. I am in central Indiana, and my last frost date is May 10th. I don't grow anything over the winter. Bernie 32065 asks, will you grow cucamelons again? Yes, I will definitely be growing them this coming year, but I'm definitely going to be giving them more room, twice as much probably. Thank you for being here, you guys. I don't know when this video is going to go out, but I hope that you are now thinking about planning your gardens for 2021 and, you know, looking for the best seeds out there or for that variety that you have been waiting for. And until the next video.